Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are taking a deep dive into the shallow end of the criminal gene pool. We've all heard of criminal masterminds, but the people we're talking about today are, well, they're the opposite of that. These are the stories of individuals whose decision-making skills are so questionable, you'll be left wondering how they even got out of bed in the morning. So, grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready to facepalm as we count down some of the most baffling and hilariously dumb arrests from around the globe. These stories prove that sometimes the biggest obstacle to a successful crime is the criminal themselves. Let's kick things off with a story from the land down under, Australia. A woman in Melbourne was stopped by police at a train station for a relatively minor offense, trespassing. Now, when police confront someone, they expect a few things, maybe some denials, perhaps a bit of attitude. What they don't expect is to find a living, breathing reptile being used as an undergarment. That's right. During their interaction, the officers discovered that this woman had decided the safest, most logical place to keep her pet python was down her pants. Her explanation? She simply forgot it was there. I have so many questions. How do you forget you have a snake in your trousers? Was it comfortable? Did she think this was a normal way to transport her scaly friend? The police report must have been a work of art. Ma'am, is that a snake in your pants, or are you just... Oh, wait, it is a snake. She was, of course, cited for the trespassing and presumably given a stern lecture about appropriate pet-carrying methods. You just can't make this stuff up. Next, we're hopping over to the home of strange news itself. Florida. A man, following a disagreement with his wife, needed a new place to stay. Instead of a hotel or a friend's couch, he opted for a more creative solution. He found a house that was on the market and decided to move in. And I don't mean he was just crashing on the floor. This guy was making himself completely at home. He was cooking elaborate meals in the kitchen, taking long, relaxing baths in the tub, and generally living his best life. He treated it like his own personal, all-inclusive resort. The dream came to an abrupt end when the real estate agent showed up with the actual homeowners, who were, to put it mildly, surprised to find a stranger enjoying their property. When confronted, his defense was essentially that the door was unlocked. He was promptly arrested for unlawful entry. I guess the old saying, "make yourself at home," has its limits, especially when you're not actually invited. It's a bold move, I'll give him that. A very, very dumb, bold move. Let's stay in the good old US of A for our next tale of questionable judgment. A driver was pulled over by police on suspicion of driving under the influence. A DUI stop is, unfortunately, a fairly common occurrence. But this one had a unique twist that made it legendary. When the officer approached the driver's side window, he wasn't greeted by an ordinary person. No. The driver was dressed in a full-body, head-to-toe costume of a Bud Light beer can. You have to admire the commitment, if not the intelligence. It's like showing up to a final exam dressed as a cheat sheet. The sheer, unapologetic irony of the situation is just breathtaking. Did he think the costume would act as camouflage, or was it a cry for help? The officer, after probably taking a moment to process what he was seeing, proceeded with the field sobriety test, which must have been a sight to behold. "Sir, can you walk in a straight line while dressed as a giant can of beer?" Unsurprisingly, he failed and was arrested. It's a classic case of dressing for the job you want if that job is getting arrested for a DUI. For our 40 story, we head to Dallas, Texas, where a man apparently felt a little lonely and decided he needed some new, exotic companions. His solution? A late-night trip to the local zoo, but he wasn't there to admire the animals from a distance. He broke into the enclosure for tamarin monkeys and managed to steal 2 of them. Now, you have these 2 monkeys. What's your getaway plan? A high-speed car chase? A secret tunnel? Nope. This genius decided his best mode of transport would be the city's public light rail system. He just casually hopped on a train with 2 stolen monkeys. As you can imagine, a man carrying a couple of monkeys on public transit tends to draw a bit of attention. Concerned citizens and fellow passengers started calling the police with tips. describing the man and his primate pals. Authorities used this information to track him down to an empty house where he was hiding out with his new friends. He was arrested, and the monkeys were safely returned to the zoo, probably with a wild story to tell their monkey friends about their brief adventure in the human world. Let's cross the pond to the United Kingdom for a story about a criminal who was almost clever. A man and his accomplices planned and executed a robbery. They were smart enough to wear masks, making it nearly impossible for witnesses or cameras to identify them. They were in the clear, home free. Well, almost. One of the robbers had a tiny little accessory that completely unraveled their plan. A court-ordered electronic monitoring tag on his ankle. He either completely forgot he was wearing it, or he severely underestimated its capabilities. While his face was hidden, his location was not. After the robbery, all the police had to do was pull up the GPS data for the electronic tag from the time the crime occurred. And what do you know? The data showed him right at the scene of the crime, and then led the police directly to his front door. He was the only member of the crew who got caught, all thanks to his own ankle bracelet. It's the modern equivalent of a thief dropping his wallet with his ID in it at the crime scene. A perfect example of being your own worst enemy. Now, for number 6, funny money. In Pennsylvania, a man walked into a store with all the confidence of a high roller. He picked out his goods, strolled up to the counter, and when it came time to pay, he pulled out his wallet and presented a $1 million bill. Now, you and I know that's not a real thing. The cashier, who clearly had more common sense in their little finger than this guy had in his entire body, was not amused. For anyone wondering, the largest denomination of U.S. currency ever publicly circulated was the $10,000 bill, and even that was discontinued back in 1969. The largest bill ever printed was a $100,000 gold certificate, but that was only used for transactions between Federal Reserve banks. So, a $1 million bill? Not a chance. The cashier calmly refused the note. Instead of realizing his mistake and maybe, I don't know, using a credit card, our aspiring millionaire insisted it was real. The police were called, and he was promptly arrested. The charge? Attempting to pass a counterfeit note. I guess you could say his plan wasn't worth $1 million after all. Next up, we travel to Seattle for a tale of breaking, entering, and napping. A burglar successfully broke into a house, ready to make off with valuables. But then a sudden and overwhelming wave of sleepiness hit him. Maybe it was the exertion, maybe it was the cozy-looking couch. Whatever the reason, he decided that the heist could wait. He needed a little shut-eye. So he made himself comfortable on the living room sofa and drifted off to dreamland. Fast forward to the next morning. The homeowner comes downstairs, probably expecting to make coffee, and instead finds a complete stranger snoring away on their furniture. I can only imagine the confusion. Do I know him? Is this a weird new delivery service? After the initial shock wore off, they did the sensible thing and called the police. The officers arrived to find the suspect still sound asleep, making it quite possibly the easiest arrest in Seattle police history. He was charged with burglary. I'd like to think they added an unofficial charge of unauthorized napping. The moral of the story? If you're going to commit a crime, maybe have an energy drink first. All right, our next story is a real emergency, or at least one woman thought it was. Picture this. You've had a long day, you treat yourself to some ice cream, but something is terribly wrong. The sprinkle to ice cream ratio is off. There are simply not enough rainbow jimmies to satisfy you. What do? Complain to the manager? Leave a bad review? Or, if you're this particular woman, you call 911. Yes, you heard that correctly. She believed that the lack of sufficient sprinkles on her dessert was a criminal offense that required the immediate attention of emergency services. The 911 dispatcher, who has probably heard everything, must have been stunned. But they have to respond to every call. So, police officers were dispatched to the scene of this dessert disaster. When they arrived, they found the woman still fuming about her sprinkleless cone. After assessing the situation and realizing there was no actual emergency, they arrested her for misusing the 911 system. It's a serious offense, tying up resources that could be needed for real life-or-death situations. I hope she learned that sprinkles are a privilege, not a right, and definitely not a matter for law enforcement. Now, let's talk about the importance of not leaving a breadcrumb trail for the police, especially when that trail is your own personal cell phone. We head over to a case where a thief broke into a car and spotted a shiny GPS device. Perfect, he thought, grabbing it. In his haste to make a getaway, he fumbled around and accidentally left something of his own behind on the front seat. His mobile phone. When the car's owner discovered the theft, they also found the abandoned phone and handed it over to the police. Now, the detectives could have gone through a lengthy process to trace the owner. Or they could try the simple approach. They looked at the recent calls and hit redial on the last number. Who picked up? The suspect's mother. Hello? The officer explained the situation, and his mom, either being a law-abiding citizen or just being fed up with her son's antics, happily told the police exactly where they could find him. It's like a modern-day fairy tale where the glass slipper is a smartphone. The thief was caught, all thanks to his own carelessness and a helpful mom. Maybe next time, he'll remember to pat his pockets before leaving the scene of a crime. We arrive at number 10 of our most brilliantly stupid criminal act. This one comes from Connecticut, where a man decided to rob a bank. He had a plan, sort of. He knew he needed a note to pass to the teller to demand the money, so he looked around for a piece of paper. What did he find? The most convenient yet worst possible option. The back of his own personal deposit slip. You know, the little piece of paper from the bank that has your name, your address, and most importantly, your account number pre-printed right on it. Undeterred by this minor detail, he scrawled his threatening message on the back and confidently slid it to the teller. The teller, trying to keep a straight face, complied with the demand and handed over the cash. The robber fled, thinking he'd pulled off the perfect crime. Meanwhile, the teller handed the note over to the police. I imagine the detective's job was pretty straightforward that day. Okay, let's see. We have the suspect's full name and his bank account number. Where should we even begin? It didn't take them long to track him down and make the arrest. He basically gift-wrapped the evidence for them. It's a good reminder to always read the fine print, especially when it's your own. Here is our next story, which takes us to the world of Grand Theft Auto, or at least an attempt at it. Picture this. A car thief, let's call him Clutchless Carl, sets his sights on a beautiful high-end sports car. He's got the tools, he's got the nerve, and he successfully bypasses the security system. The door swings open. He slips into the plush leather driver's seat, heart pounding with adrenaline. He's done it. This magnificent machine is his. There's just one tiny, insignificant car-sized problem. It's a manual. It has a stick shift. Our would-be getaway driver, a product of the automatic transmission era, is utterly stumped. He looks at the gear stick, he looks at the third pedal on the floor, and his brain just short-circuits. He's in a high-performance vehicle, the key to his escape, but it might as well be a spaceship for all the sense it makes to him. So, what does he do? Does he cut his losses and run? Of course not. He decides to stay and try to figure it out. Minutes tick by. He's fumbling with the clutch, stalling the engine, probably grinding the gears into a fine metallic powder. It's at this exact moment that the police, alerted to the break-in, arrive on the scene. They don't find a high-speed chase. They find a very confused man sitting in a stationary sports car, giving himself a crash course in manual driving. The arrest was probably the least dramatic part of the whole ordeal. The officers just walked up, tapped on the window, and likely had to explain what that mysterious third pedal was for. It's a perfect example of having the ambition for a life of crime, but not the prerequisite skills. A truly unforgettable failure to launch. From four wheels to a food fight, our next story comes from the sunny state of Florida, a place well known for its unique headlines. This one involves a man, a disagreement, and a rather unconventional weapon. It all went down in a local restaurant. Our protagonist, whom we'll name Burrito Bandit, was apparently not pleased with his dining experience. Maybe his food was cold, maybe they forgot the extra guacamole. We don't know the specifics of the complaint. What we do know is how he chose to express his dissatisfaction. Instead of, talking to the manager like a normal person, he decided to escalate the situation in a truly saucy manner. He picked up his lunch, a hefty, fully loaded burrito, and launched it directly at the restaurant manager. That's right, he weaponized his rap. Now you might be thinking, it's just a burrito, what's the big deal? Well, the authorities didn't see it that way. The man was arrested and charged with assault with a deadly weapon. A deadly burrito. I guess when you pack it with enough beans, rice, and righteous anger, it becomes a projectile of culinary chaos. Imagine trying to explain that one to your cellmate. What are you in for? Oh, assault with a tortilla. It's a testament to the fact that when tempers flare, literally anything can become a weapon in the heat of the moment. I just hope for the manager's sake it wasn't a spicy one. That would just add insult to injury. This story gives a whole new meaning to the term food fight and serves as a cautionary tale. Always treat your server with respect, or your lunch might just land you in jail. Now, let's hop across the pond to the United Kingdom for a lesson in social media etiquette for aspiring fugitives. A man was wanted by police for theft, and like many law enforcement agencies these days, they posted his mugshot and a wanted appeal on their official Facebook page. This is pretty standard stuff. They hope a member of the public will recognize him and call in a tip. But this particular suspect couldn't resist the siren song of social media notoriety. Instead of laying low and avoiding attention, he decided to actively engage with the police post about him. He started leaving comments, taunting the very people trying to find him. He wrote things like, "Catch me if you can," and other bravado-filled challenges, presumably thinking he was some kind of untouchable criminal mastermind. His friends were probably liking and sharing, all having a good laugh at the police's expense. Well, the police were also reading these comments. And while he was busy typing away, racking up internet points, they were using his digital trail and other tips to narrow down his location. The punchline to this digital chase is just perfect. Where did they eventually find this keyboard warrior? Hiding under his own bed. Not in a secret bunker, not in another country, but in one of the oldest, most cliché hiding spots in the book. The police, not missing a beat, then updated their original Facebook post. The update was simple, savage, and straight to the point. Caught him. He's no longer hiding under his bed. The internet aha moment was complete. A perfect lesson in why you shouldn't taunt the people who have your face on a wanted poster and an entire department dedicated to finding you. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. We journeyed to Germany, where a bank robber learned a valuable lesson in both physics and disguise selection. This aspiring heist artist walked into a bank with a plan. Part of that plan involved concealing his identity, a crucial step. So what did he choose for a mask? A ski mask? A bandana? A nylon stocking? No, that would be far too conventional. He opted for a clear plastic bag. Let me repeat that. A transparent, see-through plastic bag pulled over his head. His genius plan was already off to a rocky start, as a clear bag does a famously poor job of, obscuring one's facial features. Every security camera in the bank was getting a crystal-clear shot of his face, albeit slightly distorted by a thin layer of plastic. But that wasn't even his biggest problem. As he approached the terrified teller to demand money, he ran into a fundamental biological issue, the need for oxygen. He had effectively created a personal suffocation device. He started gasping for air, his face turning red, his grand, intimidating robbery quickly devolving into a desperate struggle to breathe. In a moment of sheer panic, he had to rip the bag off his head mid-robbery, right in the middle of the bank lobby. So now, not only had the cameras already recorded his face through the bag, but he also gave them a perfect, unobstructed encore performance for good measure. He fled the scene, but as you can imagine, it didn't take long for the police to identify and apprehend him. His disguise was not only completely ineffective, but also nearly took him out before the police even had a chance. It's a story that perfectly encapsulates how a lack of foresight can turn a criminal enterprise into a complete and utter farce. Now we travel to Colorado, a state known for its beautiful mountains and, apparently, its less than brilliant criminals. Picture this. A burglar decides to break into a business. Standard stuff, right? But this wasn't just any business. He broke into an escape room. Yes, a place designed specifically to test your problem-solving skills to get out. He managed the break-in part just fine. But once inside, the real challenge began. He couldn't solve the puzzles. He was trapped. The irony is just chef's kiss perfect. After hours of trying and failing to beat the game he wasn't even supposed to be playing, our frustrated felon had to make the most embarrassing phone call of his life. He called 911 on himself. The police arrived, rescued him from his self-imposed prison, and then promptly arrested him. Talk about getting played by the game. You have to wonder what was going through his head. Did he think it would be easy? Did he not read the sign? It's a classic case of underestimating the opponent, even when the opponent is a room full of riddles. Next on our list of criminal masterminds, we have a man whose ambitions were, shall we say, a bit conical. This gentleman decided to steal a bright orange traffic cone. Now, stealing a traffic cone is already a questionable life choice, but it's what he did next that elevates this from a petty crime to a legendary blunder. Overcome with pride for his new possession, he decided to wear it on his head, like a triumphant wizard's hat. He then proceeded to stroll down the street, cone hat held high for all the world to see. Unsurprisingly, it didn't take long for the police to spot the 6-foot-tall human traffic cone wandering about. He was arrested for theft, and I think it's safe to say, for crimes against fashion. You can't make this stuff up. What was the goal here? Was he trying to blend in with a construction site? Was he celebrating a very specific, very orange victory? The world may never know, but his mugshot will forever be a testament to the fact that sometimes the most obvious hiding place is the one you shouldn't wear on your head. Now, let's take a trip to the Sunshine State, because no list of bizarre crimes would be complete without a stop in Florida. A man, filled with misguided confidence, decided to rob a video game store. To execute his grand plan, he armed himself with a gun. Well, sort of. He walked in, brandished his weapon, and demanded cash. But there was a problem. The store clerk, who happened to be an avid gamer, took one look at the weapon and recognized it instantly. It wasn't a real gun. It was a light gun controller from the classic 1980s Nintendo game, Duck Hunt. Instead of fear, the clerk felt amusement. He started laughing. Imagine the robber's face. You're trying to be intimidating, and your victim is laughing at your choice of weapon. The would-be robber, utterly defeated by a piece of plastic nostalgia, fled the scene in pure embarrassment. He was, of course, apprehended later. This story is a beautiful lesson. If you're going to commit a crime, at least do your research. And maybe don't try to rob a gaming expert with a toy from your childhood attic. The only thing he was going to shoot was a pixelated duck on a CRT television. Our fourth contender for the Dumbest Criminal award proves that social media can be your worst enemy, especially when you're the one who posts the evidence. A man broke into an office and stole a laptop. A fairly common crime, but our guy made a rookie mistake of epic proportions. Before making off with his loot, he decided to quickly check his Facebook account on the stolen device. And in his haste to get away, he forgot the most crucial step, logging out. The next morning, the employees came into work, discovered the theft, and found the laptop's browser open right to the thief's Facebook profile. It was like he left behind a business card. They had his name, his photos, his friends, everything. The office staff immediately turned into amateur detectives, blasting his picture all over their own social media pages. The post went viral in the local community. Within hours, tips flooded in, and the police had him in custody. He basically handed himself over on a silver digital platter. It's a modern-day fairy tale where the glass slipper is a forgotten Facebook login. We now head to Oregon for a story that is both audacious and incredibly ill-conceived. A shoplifter set his sights on a rather bulky item, a chainsaw. Now, how do you sneak a chainsaw out of a store? Do you hide it in a giant bag? Do you make a run for it? No, this genius had a different plan. He decided to stuff it down his pants. Let me repeat that. He tried to conceal a running motor with a long, sharp chain attached to it inside his trousers. He then attempted to casually walk out of the store. As you can imagine, walking with a chainsaw down your leg is not exactly subtle. It created a rather conspicuous and awkward bulge. It's also, and I can't stress this enough, incredibly dangerous. One wrong move, and it's a horror movie scene. He didn't get very far before security, likely alerted by the man waddling like he had a very noisy, very metallic medical condition, stopped him. This is a prime example of ambition far outweighing common sense. What could possibly go right in that scenario? It's a plan with so many flaws, it's hard to know where to even begin. The story that redefines the term suing yourself. Picture this. A man gets arrested, which is already a bad day. But instead of just dealing with the legal system, he decides to take matters into his own hands in the most peculiar way possible. He files a lawsuit against himself for a cool $5 million. What was the charge, you ask? He claimed that by getting arrested, he had violated his own civil rights. Yes, you heard that correctly. He sued himself for infringing upon his own rights. He was both the plaintiff and the defendant in this one-of-a-kind legal battle. When the case landed on the judge's desk, you can just imagine the confusion. The judge, probably after a long sigh and a moment of questioning his career choice, dismissed the case, officially labeling it frivolous. It's one thing to have a bad day, but it's another to try and profit from it by suing the person responsible, yourself. It just goes to show you that sometimes the biggest obstacle in your life is, well, you. Next up, we have a cautionary tale for anyone who puts a little too much faith in technology. We've all been there, right? Following our GPS a bit too blindly, maybe taking a weird turn down a side street. But this next story takes that trust to a whole new level. A woman was driving along, dutifully following the instructions from her GPS device. "Turn right here," it said. "Continue straight," it commanded. But her electronic co-pilot failed to mention one crucial detail. The road was about to end and a canal was about to begin. Instead of using her own eyes to observe the very obvious body of water in front of her, she kept on driving. Splash! Straight into the canal. Thankfully, she managed to get out of the car unharmed, but her vehicle wasn't so lucky. It took a deep, watery nap. Imagine explaining that one to the emergency services and your insurance company. "Yes, hello? My GPS told me to drive into a canal and I listened." While she was physically fine, her car and her dignity definitely took a significant hit that day. It's a hilarious reminder to maybe look up from the screen every once in a while, especially when you're behind the wheel. Technology is a great tool, but it's no substitute for common sense. Our next story is a perfect example of what happens when the need for online validation completely overrides common sense. We're talking about a teenager who was on the run from the police. Now, most people in this situation would lay low, stay off the grid, and try to be as invisible as possible. Not this guy. He was a true child of the digital age. Facing a dilemma, he decided to crowdsource his next move. He went on social media and created a poll for his followers. The options were simple. Should he turn himself in to the authorities, or should he continue to live life on the lam? He even suggested a potential location where he might surrender, if thus turn himself in, option 1. As the votes poured in, the police were also watching. They didn't need to launch a massive manhunt or deploy a SWAT team. All they had to do was monitor his social media. Seeing the poll and the suggested surrender spot, they simply drove over to the location he mentioned and waited. Sure enough, he showed up. It was probably the easiest arrest they made all year. This is a classic case of oversharing gone horribly wrong. Pro tip, if you're wanted by the police, maybe stay off social media. Just a thought. Now let's travel to South Carolina for a story about creativity meeting criminality in the most spectacularly unsuccessful way. A man had his heart set on a brand new vehicle. He went to a car dealership, picked out the car he wanted, and went to make the payment. But he didn't pull out a credit card, a briefcase of cash, or even a legitimate checkbook. Instead, he presented the salesperson with a piece of notebook paper. On this piece of paper, he had meticulously hand-drawn a check. We're talking the full works. He drew the bank's logo, the routing numbers, the account numbers, everything. He even signed it with a flourish. He seemed genuinely convinced that this piece of artistic, albeit fraudulent paper would be enough to drive off the lot in a new car. The staff at the dealership were, to put it mildly, unconvinced. They politely declined his very unique form of payment and promptly called the police. He was arrested for attempting to buy a car with a hand-drawn check. You have to admire the audacity, I suppose, but the execution was just a little bit off. It's a good lesson. While artistic talent is great, it generally isn't recognized as legal tender. Now we have a story that is both disgusting and deeply satisfying in a karmic sort of way. It involves a pair of would-be thieves who decided they could score some free fuel by siphoning gas from a large tour bus parked for the night. Under the cover of darkness, they snuck up to the bus with a hose, ready to get to work. One of them stuck the hose into what they thought was the gas tank and started to siphon. However, they quickly realized they had made a grave error. They didn't get a mouthful of gasoline. Instead, they got a mouthful of something far, far worse. They had accidentally stuck the hose into the bus's sewage tank. Yes, the septic tank, the one used for the onboard toilet. Their criminal enterprise came to a screeching, gag-inducing halt. They were discovered a short time later by police, not because of an alarm or a witness, but because they were both violently ill by the side of the road, having experienced the world's worst taste test. It's a perfect case of instant karma, serving up a punishment far more fitting and memorable than any judge could ever dream of. They wanted to steal fuel, but instead, they got a taste of pure justice. Now for a story that takes us to New York, the city that never sleeps, and apparently never stops lending books. A man decided to embark on a literary heist, stealing over 100 books from various libraries. Now you might think, oh, a fellow intellectual, a voracious reader. Not quite. His grand plan wasn't to absorb the knowledge of the ages, it was to sell them online. He was a bookworm of the capitalist variety. His criminal enterprise hit a major plot twist when a sharp-eyed librarian spotted one of her library's rare books listed for sale. Smelling something fishy, she arranged a meet-the-seller sting operation. You can imagine the guy's surprise when his eager buyer turned out to be the very person he stole from. It's like selling a stolen car back to the original owner. He was arrested, and the books were returned to their rightful shelves. The moral of the story? Crime doesn't pay, and neither does underestimating a librarian. Next up, we have a tale that's a real head-scratcher, literally. A would-be car thief decided the best way into a locked vehicle was through the window. Solid plan, right? He picked up a brick, wound up for the pitch, and hurled it with all his might at the car's side window. There was just one tiny detail he overlooked: reinforced glass. Instead of shattering into a million pieces like in the movies, the window held strong. The brick, however, obeyed the laws of physics, ricocheted right off the glass, and smacked the thief square in the head. Police didn't need a detective to solve this case. They just followed the sound of snoring. They found him knocked out cold, lying next to the car he failed to break into, with a rather large lump on his head. I guess you could say he was hit with a dose of instant karma. He woke up in a jail cell, probably with a massive headache and a newfound respect for modern autoglass technology. Our next genius tried to play the ultimate long game, faking his own death. The goal? To cash in on a hefty life insurance policy. It's a plot we've seen in movies, but this guy's execution was more low-budget comedy than high-stakes thriller. He went through all the trouble of creating a fake death certificate and getting it to his wife, who was the beneficiary. The plan was simple. She reports his death, collects the money, and they live happily ever after. But there was a fatal flaw in his masterpiece of forgery. His wife, while reviewing the document, noticed a glaring typo, a single misspelled word. Now, most people might overlook it, but she thought, that's not right. Her suspicion was the thread that unraveled his entire scheme. She contacted the authorities, they started digging, and surprise, surprise, they found the deceased man very much alive, probably practicing his ghost walk. He went from planning a rich new life to facing some very real jail time. It's a stark reminder to always proofread your work, especially when that work is a fraudulent death certificate. From typos to social media oversharing, our next story is a masterclass in how not to be a fugitive. A man on the run from the law apparently missed the memo on laying low. Feeling a bit cheeky, he decided to update his Facebook status. And what did he post for all his friends, family, and, as it turns out, the police to see? On the run, LOL. Yes, he actually added LOL. The police department, who had been wisely monitoring his social media, probably couldn't believe their luck. They saw the post and realized they didn't need a massive manhunt. Thanks to the IP address from his phone, they could triangulate his exact location. It turns out he was enjoying a coffee at a local cafe, probably scrolling through his likes. His casual afternoon was interrupted when officers walked in and arrested him. He went from LOL to locked up in a matter of minutes. I'm sure the arresting officers had a good laugh about that one back at the station. Let's head to Ohio for a story that redefines customer service complaints. A woman was so dissatisfied with a recent purchase that she felt compelled to report it to the authorities. What was this terrible product, you ask? A faulty toaster? A bad haircut? No. She called 911 to complain about the quality of the illegal drugs she had just bought from a street dealer. You heard that right. She was unhappy with her purchase and wanted the police to do something about it. She essentially tried to get the Better Business Bureau involved in a drug deal. The 911 dispatcher was likely stunned, but they dutifully sent officers to her location. And they did intervene, just not in the way she had hoped. Instead of tracking down the dealer for a refund, they arrested her on the spot. It's one of the few times you'll see someone arrested for demanding better quality control in the black market. Talk about a dissatisfied customer who got exactly what she deserved. As we carry our tour of failed felonies, we head to a martial arts studio. Picture this. A class is in full swing, students are practicing their moves, the instructor is guiding them. It's a scene of focus and discipline. Suddenly the door bursts open. A man storms in, brandishing a weapon and starts shouting, demanding all the money. Now, in any normal establishment, this would cause panic. But here, the entire class, including the black belt instructor, just looked at each other. They genuinely thought this was a surprise training exercise. You know, a hyper-realistic drill to test their self-defense skills under pressure. So, what did they do? They did exactly what they'd been trained to do. In a flash, they moved as one, disarming the would-be robber with textbook precision. Before he even knew what was happening, he was on the ground, subdued, and probably very, very confused. The police arrived to find the robber neatly wrapped up and the class congratulating each other on passing their test. Imagine the call to 911. Yes, we have a robber here, but it's okay. We've handled it. Can you just come pick him up? That's one way to get a free lesson in why you should always do your homework before picking a target. Next, let's talk about a guy who took his inspiration from Hollywood action movies, but forgot to check the building codes. Our story takes place in a bustling restaurant during the peak of dinner service. Diners are enjoying their meals, conversations are flowing, and the ambiance is perfect. Suddenly, there's a loud crash from above. All eyes look up as the ceiling plaster cracks and gives way. And who comes tumbling down, landing in a heap of dust and drywall right in the middle of the dining room? A burglar. This genius had decided the best way to break in was to crawl through the ventilation system, just like in Mission Impossible. The only problem is, Ventilation ducts in your average restaurant aren't designed to support the weight of a grown man. He landed, dazed and covered in white powder, right at the feet of a table of very surprised customers. There was a moment of stunned silence before everyone realized what had just happened. The staff and patrons apprehended him right there. He didn't even get a chance to order an appetizer. Instead of a stealthy escape with the loot, he got a one-way ticket to jail with a side of public humiliation. Talk about a dinner and a show nobody asked for. From the ceiling to the streets, our next story involves a crime that was both ambitious and incredibly short-sighted. We've all seen those ATM heists in movies where a truck rips the machine right out of the wall. Well, one man decided to try it in real life, and to his credit, he actually succeeded in yanking a whole ATM from its foundation. Success! The first part of the plan was a go. The problem? He severely underestimated just how heavy an ATM is. When he tried to lift it into the back of his getaway truck, it was a no-go. It was just too heavy. But was he deterred? Of course not. He had a new plan. Just drag it. So this guy starts driving down the street dragging a multi-ton cash machine behind his truck. As you can imagine, this created quite a scene. A massive trail of sparks lit up the night sky, and the sound of metal scraping on asphalt could be heard for blocks. More importantly, the ATM gouged a giant, unmissable trench in the road. When the police got the call, they didn't need a complex investigation or a team of detectives. They just followed the very obvious path of destruction, a breadcrumb trail of scraped pavement and sparks, which led them directly to the suspect's location. He might as well have left a signed note and a map. Now, for a tale of politeness that went horribly wrong for the criminal involved. Over in Belgium, a man walked into a store with the intention of robbing it. He approached the owner, made his threats, and demanded the cash from the register. But the store owner, in a moment of either incredible calm or brilliant strategy, simply told him it was a bad time. He explained that he had just opened, and there was hardly any cash in the till. "It's not worth your time," he said. "Why don't you come back later this afternoon? There will be much more money then." In a twist you couldn't make up, the robber thought this was a reasonable suggestion. He nodded, agreed, and said he'd be back in a few hours. And he was a man of his word. He left peacefully and, true to his promise, returned later that day, expecting a much bigger payday. What he found instead was the store owner, and a welcoming committee of police officers who had been patiently waiting for him. The robber literally scheduled his own arrest. You have to admire his punctuality, I guess. It's probably the most courteous armed robbery attempt in history, and also one of the easiest arrests the local police ever had to make. Now we have a case that proves the old saying, the devil is in the details. Or in this case, the spelling. A group of counterfeiters in Australia had what they thought was a foolproof plan. They'd invested in the equipment, the ink, the special paper, everything they needed to produce high-quality fake $20 bills. They printed a massive batch and were ready to flood the market with their forged currency. There was just one tiny, microscopic, insignificant little problem. On their beautifully printed, otherwise convincing bills, they had misspelled the name of their own country. Instead of Australia, their notes proudly read Australia without the second A. It wasn't even a subtle mistake. Once the first few bills entered circulation, it didn't take a currency expert to spot the glaring typo. The authorities were alerted, and the ridiculously obvious error was a dead giveaway. They were able to trace the source of the funny money back to the counterfeiters and shut down their entire operation. All that effort, all that planning, brought down by a single missed letter. It's a stark reminder that if you're going to commit a crime, at the very least, run a spell check. Vancouver, Canada, with a man who thought he was in an action movie. While trying to evade police, he decided the best escape route was up. He climbed onto an overhead cable suspended high above a restaurant and just dangled there. For a full 45 minutes, this guy was swinging back and forth, putting on a show for everyone below. But it gets better. While hanging from the wire, he started hurling bricks at the officers. It was a bizarre one-man siege that ended exactly how you'd expect, with him being safely brought down and promptly arrested. I guess his high-wire act didn't have a grand finale. Next up, we have a story that's for the birds, literally. An American student studying abroad decided to pull off a heist, but not for cash or jewels. His target? The Tring Zoological Museum in England. He broke in and stole nearly 300 rare and valuable bird skins. These weren't just any old feathers. Some of them were from extinct species collected by naturalists like Alfred Russel Wallace. His plan was to sell them to collectors and fly-tying enthusiasts. It was a bizarre and ultimately foolish crime against history and science. He was eventually caught, and the bird skins were recovered, but it remains one of the strangest museum thefts on record. Now let's head over to the UK for a truly classic bit of British buffoonery. A man decided he was going to steal a double-decker bus. Just picture it. He actually managed to get the massive vehicle started, but there was one small problem. He was a terrible driver. He went on a chaotic joyride, crashing into multiple parked cars, taking out streetlights, and generally causing mayhem. His grand tour came to an abrupt end when he plowed the bus straight into a garden wall. And where did the police find our aspiring bus driver? Trying and failing to hide in a hedge. You can't make this stuff up. This next one is a masterclass in not thinking things through. A man in the U.S. walked into a store and tried to pay with a stolen credit card. On the back of the card, where the signature goes, the original owner had wisely written CID. So, when the cashier dutifully asked to see his identification, our criminal didn't panic. He didn't run. Instead, he confidently pulled out his wallet and handed over his own driver's license. The name on the license, of course, did not match the name on the credit card. The cashier just stared at him, then at the card, then back at him, before calmly calling the authorities. He practically gift-wrapped the evidence. Okay, this next one is a testament to the dangers of modern technology if you're, well, an idiot. A pair of thieves in Iowa broke into a home and stole a whole bunch of electronics, including tablets and laptops. Feeling pretty proud of their haul, they decided to commemorate the moment with a selfie. They gathered all the stolen goods, smiled for the camera, and took a picture. Here's the kicker. The device they used was linked to the victim's cloud account, which was set to automatically upload new photos. So, a few moments later, the victim gets a notification, checks their account, and sees a brand new picture of two strangers posing gleefully with all their stolen property. They forwarded the photo to the police, and the thieves were arrested shortly after. It's like they wanted to get caught. And for our final story of criminal genius, we go back to Britain. A man decided to send a series of creepy, anonymous letters to several women. The letters were unsettling, and the recipients were understandably disturbed. He probably thought he was being clever, hiding behind the anonymity of the mail. But he made one tiny, crucial mistake. On the letters, he included his own phone number. Yes, you heard that right. This anonymous letter writer left his personal contact details on the evidence. It didn't take a detective genius to trace the number back to him, and he was quickly arrested. It's one of the fastest open and shut cases of anonymous harassment you'll ever hear about. And there you have it. 40 people who probably should have stayed in bed. It just goes to show that crime doesn't pay, especially when you're really, really bad at it. If you enjoyed this trip down the lane of laughable law-breaking, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and stay smart out there.